verse was most appropriate. Psalm 144. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war, my fingers for battle, my loving kindness and my fortress, my high tower and my deliverer, my shield and the one in whom I take refuge, who subdues my people under me. Lord, what is man that you take knowledge of him, or the son of man that you are mindful of him? Man is like a breath. His days are like a passing shadow. Bow down your heavens, O Lord, and come down. Touch the mountains, and they shall smoke. Flash forth lightning and scatter them. Shoot out your arrows and destroy them. Stretch out your hand from above. Rescue me and deliver me out of great waters, from the hand of foreigners, whose mouth speaks words, and whose right hand is a right hand of falsehood. I will sing a new song to you, O God. On a harp of 10 strings I will sing praises to you, the one who gives salvation to kings, who delivers David, his servant, from the deadly sword.
Good afternoon. As you're figuring out, yes, Kyle is an incredible SEAL. Brave, smart, tough, and yes, he was a gifted sniper. Calm, cool, patient, and precise. But Chris was much more than a patriotic serviceman, much more than a talented marksman, much more than an outstanding SEAL, and much, much more than just a person. He was a man, he was a myth, and he was a legend. Let me tell you about the man. Talking to a young SEAL last night that had worked with Chris in Ramadi in 2006, a hail of bullets ripped through the building they were occupying as they provided overwatch for coalition forces. Due to the barrage of gunfire, this young SEAL dropped to the ground and hid behind a wall. When he finally got the courage to look back up, he saw Chris, who hadn't come off his gun, who hadn't taken cover, but instead stayed glued to his weapon, covering his field of fire, and was calling out enemy positions as he began to engage them. In the push through Fallujah in 2004, Chris had been sent to provide sniper protection to Marines from a safe distance as the city was cleared of ruthless and violent insurgents. But Chris believed he could be more effective if he was closer to the Marines he was supporting. So he joined them in the streets, moving house to house, door to door, alongside them, ensuring that they were safe. During that push, he even ran through a hail of enemy bullets to rescue one Marine that had been separated from his unit. During his last deployment to Iraq in 2008, he was called on once again to use his God-given talent as a sniper to protect U.S. Army units as they fought for control of the savage neighborhood of Sadr City. Once again, his lethal skill was critical in saving the lives of coalition forces as they fought against a determined enemy. For countless acts of heroism and bravery like these, Chris received numerous awards, all for valor, including multiple Bronze Stars and Silver Stars. But these acts and these awards and these events are not what made Chris Kyle. Now let me tell you about the myth. There's a myth that a sniper is always orderly and neat and detailed. Now, although Chris's weapons were always clean, his personal space was definitely not. When Chris went home from deployment in 2006, his room was in such a devastated state of filth, it took days to clean, including picking up 6 months worth of sunflower seed shells that had been spit on the ground around his bed. There's a myth of dedication to the job. Well, the reality is that there was no Navy SEAL who would ever been more dedicated to video games than Chris Kyle. After being in the field for days, conducting exhausting operations, where every other SEAL would be heading to bed to get some well-deserved sleep, Chris would fire up his Alienware computer for a marathon session of John Madden NFL football, play that video game and relive his childhood Texas football glory. There's also the myth of rigid discipline. And now, while Chris was certainly a force on the battlefield, he was seldom in anything resembling a military uniform. He painted Punisher skulls on his gear, cut the sleeves off his shirts, wore civilian hunting shoes in place of combat boots, and instead of the ballistic protection of a Kevlar helmet, he preferred to sport a faded University of Texas Longhorn ball cap, just to make sure the enemy knew Texas was being represented and that Texans shot straight. There's a myth that SEALs are waterborne frogman commandos. And while we know Chris was extremely comfortable in urban combat on long patrols in the desert, to be honest with you, he didn't like the water at all. He didn't want to scuba dive or even swim in the cold Pacific Ocean. And every time there was training in the water, Chris mysteriously had other business to attend to, or an injured knee, or a perforated eardrum, or a sinus infection, or any and all imaginable medical complications that would prevent that good old Texas country boy from getting in the ocean at all. There's also a myth that the warrior is always serious and constantly on edge. There could be nothing further from the truth with Chris. His cackling laughter was a constant sound during training and even during combat. His pranks were always hilarious, unless, of course, you were the unfortunate victim, in which case you could either laugh or, as you've heard today, get choked out. And finally, there's this myth about this nickname, the Legend, which, to be frank with you, started out as a joke. Chris had left his platoon, who was in the Pacific Theater, to go and augment other SEALs that were in Iraq that were getting ready to push through Fallujah. And when stories of Chris's heroism and success in combat started to circulate back to his teammates, they began to sarcastically and mockingly refer to Chris as the Legend. But I think, as we gather here today, it's very clear that that myth became a reality. But what made Chris legendary was not his skill as a SEAL, or as a sniper, or his sense of humor, or his valorous acts on the battlefield. What made Chris a legend was his heart. It was his heart that made him care so much for his teammates. He would do anything for his brothers in arms, and he was crushed when they were lost. I remember when Mark Lee, from Chris's Charlie platoon, who was the first SEAL killed in Iraq, died in a vicious gunfight. Many of the SEALs from our troop prepared something to say at the memorial service in Ramadi. Chris had written out a short speech, but when his time came, he couldn't give it. He sat in the audience and cried. And when the service was over, he came up and hugged me and cried and apologized and said, "I'm sorry, I wanted to, but I just couldn't do it." When Mike Mansour was killed after jumping on a grenade to save his fellow SEALs, Chris was again overcome by grief at losing a friend, a teammate, a brother. And he was so proud of his little brother type, new guy, Ryan Job, who had been gravely wounded in Ramadi while he was actually a part of Chris's element. Blinded in both eyes by an enemy bullet, but who made it back to America and got married and graduated from college and was expecting his first child. And when Ryan died, after complications from a surgery to repair his lingering wounds, Chris was once again devastated. And that proud cowboy cried his heart out. Yes, it was his big Texas heart that guided him. And when the time came, and he realized how hard the deployments and stress and separation had been on his family, he decided to walk away from that career. Walk away from a career so filled with promise, a career he was so eminently qualified to succeed at. He decided to walk away from it all and become a full-time dad. Being a dad was a skill he certainly learned so well from his own father, Wayne, who taught Chris to shoot, hunt, ride, who taught Chris how to be a man. Once Chris got out of the Navy, he wrote to one of his former platoon mates, "I do miss the teams, but I love being there every day for my kids. There's nothing better in the world than being a dad." We know Chris loved his country and his job as a SEAL, but nothing was more important to him than his children, and he left his career to be with them and give everything he had to his wife and his kids, that he cherished more than anything. But his big heart had more. Once he was out, Chris dedicated himself to helping others, to helping wounded veterans through various foundations. He raised money for charities to help families of the fallen. He wanted to give back, to give more, to continue to help. And through his strong faith in God, he transformed himself from a battle-hardened warrior to a caring friend, a loving father, and a dedicated husband. And that is what makes Chris a legend. And I can tell you all this without any reservation. Though we may feel sadness and loss, know this: legends never die. And Chris Kyle is not gone. Chris Kyle is everywhere. He is the fabric of the freedom that blesses the people of this great nation. He is forever embodied in the strength and tenacity of the SEAL teams, where his courageous path will be followed and his memory enshrined as SEALs continue to ruthlessly hunt down and destroy America's enemies. Our country's entire military will always recall his valor as they serve and fight for freedom. In future generations, his story will inspire young men across the land to join the service and lead and sacrifice and protect their country with courage and commitment. Chris will live on with those who knew him, friends eternally blessed by his presence. Chris lives on with his parents and his family in their thoughts and memories forever, young and bold and funny and unconquerable. He is eternally in the hearts and souls of his beloved son and daughter, where he will vigilantly protect them and silently overwatch them and guide them down the path of life. He is with his wife, Taya, always, in love, for eternity. Yes, he is Chris Kyle. He is the legend. Legends never die, and his spirit will live on forever. God bless you, Chris, and your family. And God bless the United States of America.
Pass on the love, the kindness, the precious gift of human life. Those were the words from my son's last letter home. Mark Allen Lee was the first Navy SEAL killed in Iraq August 2nd, 2006, and Chris was one of Mark's teammates who courageously fought with him and was with him when he died. Mark's final gift to me was his teammates. There was a bond between Mark and Chris that would not be severed by Mark's death. Chris didn't even have to consider stepping into Mark's boots and fulfilling the role of taking care of me. He knew it was the right thing to do. He adopted me, and I adopted him, and thus began the birth of a relationship that is hard to describe. We all know the national hero and the mighty warrior Chris was, but I want to share with you another side of Chris Kyle that those close to him saw every day, and is the reason why he did what he did on the battlefield. I want to share with you Chris's huge heart, full of compassion, love, generosity. He gave selflessly. I remember having a conversation with Chris after my son, Christopher, told me that when he completed his master's, he would probably be moving back to Japan, where he met his wife and all of her family was. Without hesitation, Chris replied, "Mama Lee, if that happens, you come live with us." I remember my chuckle at that time that said, "Oh, how sweet." To which Chris matter-of-factly replied, "I'm serious." Chris has told me numerous times, "Mama Lee, you are part of the Kyle family." I'm reminded of Christ when he hung on the cross. John 19:26-27. When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing that time on, this disciple took her into his home. That's what Chris did for Mark. That is what Chris did for me. I remember the day I was in a meeting with Governor Brewer at the state capitol and looking at my phone and seeing that it was Chris. I excused myself to take the call. After all, my boys take top priority. We chatted for a while, and then Chris told me that he wanted to make sure Kelly and I were taken care of, and that he was donating the proceeds from the book to us. I was speechless, overwhelmed and in tears. I knew that Chris deeply loved Mark and Ryan, and that I was like family to him. But his love and generosity revealed that in an over-the-top way. Chris didn't publish that book for an income or to be famous. He hated the spotlight. Chris did that for his teammates, to take care of his buddies, and use that platform that God gave him to encourage our nation, to remember the sacrifice our troops make for you and for me every day, and the responsibility we have to take care of them and their families when they return home. Chris wasn't wealthy. He didn't take a salary from Kraft. He didn't give out of abundance. It was a sacrifice that he selflessly gave to repay the sacrifice his teammates had made. He trusted that God would provide for him and his family. Chris's heart of compassion gave to help our wounded warriors, and his last act was evidence of that. Chris lived day in, day out, on the battlefield and off, giving selflessly. 2 Corinthians 9:13 says, "Because of the service by which you have proved yourself, others will praise God for the obedience that accompanies your confession of the gospel of Christ, and for your generosity in sharing." Chris Kyle, you proved yourself, son. And today we praise God for your obedience, for your love, for your compassion and generosity. We will see that Taya, the kids, and the family are taken care of, and we will continue to echo your voice and take care of our troops and their families. The night Mark died, God led me to Psalms 27, and I would encourage each of you to read it when you go home. But verse 13 and 14 says, I would have lost hope if I had not believed I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait on the Lord. Be of good courage, and he will strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. Hoo-yah, Chris Kyle.
I'm going to tell you a quick story. Like every good story, it starts in a bar. Chris and I were sitting in a bar in Colorado after providing a elk hunt for a bunch of wounded warriors. And the bar owner thought that we were a couple of big shots or something and asked if we wanted to buy his bar. People and we'll make it happen. So we started joking around, asking what are we going to name our bar. And after a few names that probably wouldn't have flown with the city council, Chris looks up at me and he says, how about Valor? To pay homage to every man and woman that's fought in combat. He said, no matter if you win a medal for it, we all fight with valor. And Chris is my friend. I'm also a United States Marine, and Chris helped me write this song. Forged in blood, baptized in fire, hearts of saints, courage of lions. Some gave it all in the final hour. All died too young, but all fought with valor. And that freedom ring, let the angels sing. Hear their voices raise up the highest of towers, that they all fight with valor. Fight for country, fight for God, fight to honor heroes lost, brothers in arms will always be. I fought for you, and you died for me. In that freedom ring, let the angels sing. Hear their voices raise up the highest of towers, that they all fought with valor. Land of the free, cause of the brave, never quit the price we've paid. Some gave it all in the final hour, never forget, all fought with valor. In that freedom ring, let the angels sing. Their voices raise up the highest of towers. We all fight with valor. Yeah, we all fight with valor. We all fight with valor. Yeah, we all fight with valor. Semper Fidelis, brother.
My name's Beau French, and I'm one of Chris's friends and business partners at Kraft. I'm one of the lucky ones who avoided his infamous chokeout, but I'll get to that in a minute. First, I want to share with you what I know about Chris. The SEAL the public didn't know about, the man who remained just as dedicated to serving those who serve. As you can imagine, it's hard to take a warrior, the Devil of Ramadi, the legend, and transition him to an office in downtown Dallas, ensuring that he attend conference calls, business lunches, all sorts of boring office stuff, unless, of course, you bring along an iPad loaded with games. It didn't matter who we were meeting, a friend, a chief of police, a CEO. Chris had his iPad. I'm sure the other people in the meeting thought he was, taking notes furiously, admiring his focus on the discussion. I knew better. The thing is, Chris still took in every single word. He was always in the game, in every sense of the word. Chris was also the kind of guy who meant what he said. Like, if he said he was going to choke you out, he meant it. Most people would laugh awkwardly at that, waiting for the "I'm just kidding." But no, Chris was serious. Chris choked out a lot of people, including our in-house counsel, a former football star, and a billionaire. To Chris, choking out was just another prank. He loved having fun. One time he walked into my office and slammed his hand down on my desk and said, "Beau, I'm going to give you a raise." As he lifted his hand, I noticed there was just a penny on my desk. I will never forget the grin on his face as he walked out. I still have that penny. I mentioned earlier that I was one of the lucky ones to avoid the chokeout. One time we were at a friend's ranch out by the pool. I saw Chris over there, standing casually by the edge of the pool, wearing his usual boots and jeans, camo shirt. I didn't give it much thought as I snuck up behind him and shoved him just right. Chris went splashing into the water, fully clothed, keys, wallet, cell phone and all. What y'all heard earlier about Chris is, even though he's a SEAL, he hated the water. I laughed for about 1.2 seconds before his hands were already around my throat. Just as I was about to black out, there was that grin again. He let go. I knew what was coming. I just didn't know when. And that's how Chris liked it. So that's the prankster, fun-loving side of Chris. But an even larger part of him was his love for those who serve. His dream for Kraft was to provide training to those who were headed into harm's way. Every life saved. He wanted to help them, help everyone. It was as simple as that. Over time, that grew into not only training, but helping veterans. Chris's profound desire, and boy was it profound, to help others was contagious. His consideration of others was unsurpassed. Thinking just back a couple of weeks ago at SHOT Show in Las Vegas, Chris must have shaken 1,000 hands, or probably 5,000 hands. Every single person that walked up to him to ask him for an autograph, say hello, take a picture, he did it with a smile, a genuine smile. Every morning when he came to work, he'd go out of his way, walk across the lobby of our building to shake the hand of the security guard, James. Every time he left for the day, he'd walk into my office and shake my hand. It's just the kind of man Chris was. In the last week, we've received thousands of emails from people who are as devastated as we are, and thank you for each of those, your words and prayers. But I have to tell you what's really awesome. all the emails we received before Chris died. Some were from Vietnam veterans who wrote him to say thank you. It was because of his book that for the first time in 40 years, their wives finally understood what they had been through. Others were from young men who hoped to one day serve their country the way Chris did. Others were simply thanking him for his service. I didn't do that enough. Thank him. We would often give Chris a hard time about whether or not he was coming into the office when he'd been MIA for a couple of days. In reality, we knew Chris had missed enough time with his family during his deployments. If it went prankster, desire to help others, love for his family would be up here, maybe up to the roof in this building. Colton, he was so proud of you. He loved you. He bragged about you all the time, about the man you were becoming. And your sister, sweet little angel, Daddy's little girl, forever. Taya, boy, did he love you. He was grateful beyond description that you stuck with him through all the hard times when he was gone on deployment. But I can tell you, these last couple of years, his love for you had grown even more. There's so many things in life we can never be sure of, can't explain, we will never get the answer to. But I can tell you one thing I'm sure of. I'm a better man for having known Chris. Everyone who met him is. I'm also sure that he's looking down on us right now with that grin on his face, knowing he achieved his dream, looking at all of you he impacted. He did it. And I also know that if I don't end soon, he's going to finish what he started by the pool and choke me out. So Chris, thank you.
I'm going to be reading a letter from Chris's parents. And before I do, I want to say thank you so much for the man you guys raised. For everything he did to us, you guys helped develop. And we cannot thank you enough. The letter is titled, "A Parent's Love is Forever." We shared Chris's laughter, his smile, his pranks, his jokes, and his stories. Always a story to be told, and only in the way Chris could express so vividly. So many laughs, even the 0200 April Fool's calls, and the New Year's wake-up surprises. As parents, we have such dreams for our sons. They are unlimited. Our worth lies in the real and unique individuals that God intends. We encourage Chris to dream big. He did, and he achieved those dreams, much more than he could ever expect. Chris, bud, God had a plan for your life, much bigger than we can ever comprehend. You have touched so many lives with your infectious laughter, your side grin, your great sense of humor, your compassion and tender-heartedness, and of course, that twinkle in your eye. You loved life and lived it at full blast. We stand here today, brokenhearted, knowing that death may end a life, but your spirit will live on eternally. It will never end our immense love for you. You have been an example for standing up for your convictions, pride in your country, and your true love for Texas. Our hearts ache to feel, once more, those engulfing and loving bear hugs you always gave and to hear you say, I love you, Dad, and I love you, Mom. To see you smile, to hear you laugh, and to watch you with your family. As parents, all we could give you is love, direction, courage to succeed, and to believe in yourself. You took all of that and lived life to the fullest. You had a passion for everything you did. Bud, God anointed you with the name, the Protector. Your life embodied the full meaning of that. You were tender to the young, compassionate with the wounded, and sympathetic for the less fortunate. The Lord had his hand on you the moment you were born. You were destined for greatness. We could not be any more proud of you, son, not in your medals, honors, notoriety, but in the loving son, committed husband and father, and truly amazing man you have become. Your courage of conviction, your strength and perseverance, and the hope that survives disappointments are the keys to your success in life. You embraced and lived the slogan, courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyways. Your successful life is not measured in how well known you were, but how well respected you are. Not in the power to take, but in your willingness to give. Your success is measured by the height of your aspirations, the width of your vision, and the depths of convictions. Chris, you define the true meaning of success. Until you spread your wings, you will then know how far you can fly. So, son, heaven has no limits. Soar in heaven and watch over all of us. Son, we are so thankful for having you in our life, for the years that God had given us. We are so blessed to have shared your happiness and in your sorrow. So proud to watch you achieve your goals. You are a true blessing. Son, you will live in our hearts forever. We will rejoice in the memories that you have given us, so many of those. We are so brokenhearted, but we will persevere as we grasp onto your strength that you have given all of us. We will stand at ease because we know that you are now standing guard over all of us. We have loved you, and we will continue to love you even more. Love, Mom and Dad.
Father strong to save, whose arm hath bound the restless waves, who bids the mighty ocean deep its own appointed limits keep. Oh, hear
When you think you cannot do something, think again. Chris always said, the body will do whatever the mind tells it to. I'm counting on that now. I stand before you, a broken woman, but I am now and always will be the wife of a man who is a warrior both on and off the battlefield. Some people along the way have told Chris that through it all, he was lucky I stayed with him. I'm standing before you now to set the record straight. Remember this, I am the one who is literally, in every sense of the word, blessed that Chris stayed with me. I feel compelled to tell you that I'm not a fan of people romanticizing their loved ones in death. I don't need to romanticize Chris because our reality is messy, passionate, full of every extreme emotion known to man, including fear, compassion, anger, pain, laughing so hard we doubled over and hugged it out, laughing when we were irritated with each other, and laughing when we were so in love it felt like someone hung the moon for only us. All of it, the messy, painful, constantly changing, crazy ride, was rolled up into the deepest, most soul-changing experience that only one man, Kyle, could bring. Chris was all in, no matter what he did in life. If he loved you, and I mean really loved you, he did it without judgment. One of my clearest memories I'll relate to you now and attempt to explain how he put me and others in his life at ease. The backstory is that Chris and I fell in love quickly. He was like a kid in a candy store and jumped into loving me with both feet and no looking back. It made me feel like pure gold because I thought he was the most uniquely idealistic, fun, loving, intelligent, intuitive, and sensitive man I had ever met. It was starting to weigh heavily on my heart that this amazing man had a love is blind thing going on. A couple of months into our relationship, we were in the car in Coronado, California, and I got up the courage to tell something to Chris that I felt was very important for him to know. As happy as I was with Chris when we were physically together, we lived in different cities, and my real life, meaning the time I was not physically in his company, was full of stress and anxiety for many different reasons. Chris, I think you need to know something, I confessed. I'm really messed up. I really struggle with a lot of things. Without batting an eye and without pausing, he gently said, in a way only Chris could, "You're a package deal, babe. I love you. All of you." He grabbed my hand, and that was it. I was and tough time. When I was hard on myself, he was the gentle that the sum of me, my failures, my love, joy, anxiety, and pain, were all rolled up into a package that was just fine by him. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for loving me. All of me. I want to take a minute and honor Chad Littlefield, because loving without judgment is what Chad gave to Chris also. Chad and Chris started with a clean slate. Chad met Chris as just another father on the ball field, trying to love his family. In the craziness of life, Chad came along with his quiet, large presence and easy smile, complete with a rugged beard and dimples, and blessed Chris with a friendship that was the one thing Chris needed more than anything. It was effortless. Chad would just show up and share some laughs, or show up and not say a word depending on Chris's mood that day. Chad helped Chris get back into his workouts by doing one thing. He showed up. It was good for both of them. Chris used to tell me some mornings after a 5 a.m. workout with Chad, "Well, Chad and I were real chatty this morning." I would start laughing, knowing what was coming. "Oh yeah?" I would say. "Did y'all say one sentence or two?" A couple times, Chris shocked me by saying there were maybe a couple short bursts of conversations. Thanks for the glove. But it was 5 a.m. Neither one of them wanted to be there at 5 a.m. They were there because Chris needed it. If Chris had a particularly rough day, there were times he would mention it to Chad, and I have a feeling those conversations were as short as the 5 a.m. ones, plus or minus some. On those days, after the kids were in bed, it was common for Chad to just pop over for a visit. Chad and Leanne told us once they were Chris and my FBBs. That stood for Friends Before the Book. That was absolutely true, and we knew it. That didn't mean Chad didn't appreciate the legend and the seal in Chris, though. A little over a week ago, Chad showed up, as he often did, just after the kids had gone to bed. He sauntered in, Sonic bag and large soda in hand, with his usual smile, nod, and a "What's up, girl?" to me. That evening, he showed Chris a new rifle and scope he had just invested in and asked Chris to fix the scope for him. Chris was asking Chad all kinds of technical questions about what he wanted and needed with it. Chad just cocked his head sideways and laughed. "You tell me, brother." Chris went back to work, and Chad looked at me and said, Kyle is fixing my scope." "What?" In that tone he knew would crack us all up, and it did. The bottom line is this. If it was a workout Chris needed, Chad was in. If it was a quiet night of hanging out, Chad was in. Thank you, Chad. Thank you for being that effortless, no expectations, comforting friend that Chris needed. Chris and I both knew you loved him, and the feeling was mutual, my friend. I think you know that too. Kids, I will cherish the look on your dad's face, exactly like the one here on this easel, that lit up his face when you would both come running across the house, just to take a flying leap into his arms and tell him how much you missed him when he was gone. He loved that. I hope you know with all your heart that being your dad is the highlight of your dad's life. He would always shake his head and wonder how he got so lucky to be with you. I honestly do not remember a night where Daddy and I would tuck you in, and when we are so blessed to have you two kids. Bubba, your dad is so impressed by your intelligence, your kind heart, and your athletic ability, among many other things. He loved to make you laugh. If it was inappropriate and made you laugh, he did it more to see you laugh longer. He loved the way you hugged him and sat, cuddled up next to him on the couch. You made him feel like the best dad in the world. He called you his little man because in so many ways he already sees the man in you, and he's proud. He loves you beyond measure. Baby girl, Daddy had no idea what having a daughter would be like. He soon found out that you would soften and melt his heart with your many kisses and hugs, or you would squeeze him and not let go. Or the way, if his lap was empty, you would crawl up there and fill it up. You love him in a way that is different than anything he has ever known. And it always has and always will delight him to no end. He loved your jokes and loved the way you would be his sweet little girl, all with a no-holds-barred attitude, like the way you told him off in the sweetest and most sincere way after the Six Flags ride scared you. Above all else, he loves you wholly and completely, and he knows you also thought he was the best dad in the world. So, my sweet angels, we will put one foot in front of the other and remember how silly Dad was and how we all made fun of his Texas twang. We will laugh and how we would poke the bear. And we will hug each other tightly, just like Dad would do with us. We will pray the prayers he prayed with us. We will remember that your dad has so much pride in your manners, your good sportsmanship, and your friendship to each other, and we will continue them all. We will remember that his baby girl and his Bubba mean the world to him, and that he didn't just talk about that. He loved you, and he lived his life to show you. Okay. Chris, there isn't enough time to tell you everything you mean to me and everything you taught me. I know you had no idea you were teaching me, but there is something only God and I have known for a long time. God worked through you to make me into the woman I am supposed to be. I almost feel sorry for you, babe, because God knew it would take the toughest and softest-hearted man on earth to get a hard-headed, cynical, hard-loving woman like me to see what God needed me to see. And he chose you for the job. He chose well. You taught me innocent, reckless love without abandon. You taught me how to turn a life full of fear into a life full of faith. You taught me that I could be more independent than I ever wanted to be. You taught me how to raise children with love and softness, and proved it could be done with a high standard of respect and old-fashioned values. You taught me that I could forgive more deeply than I thought I could. You taught me that I was actually able to hold my tongue in anger. By the way, I'm sorry that took so long. You taught me that even as a Yankee, I could learn to have a conversation with my slow-talking Texas man without interrupting. I swear, I never thought that was possible, and I know you thought that too. You taught me that I'm okay, just the way I am. You taught me that no matter what life lays in front of you, it is unwise to worry or overthink it, because even in the worst of times, life has a way of working out. And you have showed me that in life, and even in death, some people are always with you. I love you, Chris. I love you. I love you.
Glad to be with you here today. I obviously never got to meet Chris, but the more I learn about him, the more I wish I could have had that opportunity. And through Tay, I learned not that long ago now that one of the songs we recorded years ago was something that meant a whole lot to them. And happy I could be here to do it for you. I've heard a freight train out across the way. I heard a woman sing Amazing Grace. I heard a night bird call to its mate. When I heard you whisper my name, I heard freedom break its chains. I heard a heartbeat where once no sound remained, and I heard angels rise and praise when I heard you whisper my name. But I heard music bring a heart of stone to tears. I heard peace ring like an anthem through the years, and I heard hatred fall from grace when I heard you whisper my name. Beating softly against the waves fell the sound of an early morning rain. And though the lightning and thunder came, I still heard you whisper my name. I heard music bring a heart of stone to tears. I heard peace ring like an anthem through the years, and I heard hatred fall from grace when I heard you whisper my name. I heard angels rise whisper my name. Oh, thank you. And there was one more request that I do today, and again, very happy I could be here to do it for you, but anybody that wants to sing along, I urge you to, because we all know the words to it, obviously. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. It was grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How preciously that grace appeared. The hour I first believed. Through many dangerous toils and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace shall lead me on. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, with no last days to sing God's praise. Then when we first begun,
Well, 1 hour and 48 minutes since this memorial service began over in Arlington at Cowboy Stadium. Christopher Scott Kyle's casket being carried out by 8 members of the United States Navy. And it's been nearly 2 hours, at times funny, at times jovial, at times very, very emotional. And the strength of Taya Kyle today playing out on that stage. I don't know that everybody expected her to speak today.
Well, I think that, they said that they would cover all aspects of his life, and I think they did that very well. And I know I was certainly surprised when she spoke, and there probably wasn't a dry eye in the house because the emotions, the heartfelt emotions that were felt by everybody there. And I think it lent, and not everybody knew that side of him, even from reading the book.
He was known in book form to so many, and he shared a little bit in the book, obviously, about his relationship and the story that goes back to 2009 when he and Taya Kyle, his wife, had the meeting at their kitchen table. He told me about this in an interview just a year ago. Taya was there for this interview as well, where it was this moment where she said, I hate to tell you this, but it's either the kids and me or it's your military career. And that day, it was a simple decision for him, he told me. He said it was my wife and kids, and I would walk away from a career that, in his words, he'd give his right arm to go do it again. This is what Chris Kyle, it's what he ate, it's what he breathed, it's what he loved, doing what he did for the United States military. But on that day, for his family, there was no other decision.
He loved his family more. And this is, you're looking at
this is
video, yes, of what has just taken place. Again, this started about almost 2 hours ago, and this is when they brought the casket in for the beginning of the ceremony.
And if you didn't join us at the top, the casket had been brought right up the 50-yard line, placed there on the star, emblazoned at center field, of course, at Cowboy Stadium over in Arlington. And what followed was a wonderful hour and 48 minutes of words and of prayer and of music as well.
And Chris Kyle was, so many people, they may not have known that he was a Texan and a proud Texan. We saw his fellow SEAL recounting how instead of wearing the bulletproof, the helmets and everything else, he would rather wear a ball cap with a longhorn steer on the front so that the enemy would know that there was a Texan and Texans shot straight.
And he had a wonderful sense of humor in the few times that I had the opportunity to speak to him on the telephone, also in the interview that we did for the story we did last year. Our Shari Williams has been there outside Cowboy Stadium throughout this couple of hours. And Shari, outside very, very quiet, I would well imagine, as well as inside. But give us the sense of what things were like there for people who did get to attend today in person.
Well, we had the opportunity to listen in on the service here in our live truck, Doug and Karen, as you just watched yourself play out a very moving, emotional, touching memorial service. I can tell you that as people began to show up here right when the doors opened at 11:30, there were already people here well in advance of that, wanting to be here to share in this moment to honor Chris Kyle. A large component to the success of this event was security. That was a major player for those who were organizing, those who were involved in making this happen. And we could see it. The presence was felt. The security presence was felt the moment we pulled up. The security was outside near the doors. When I tell you that everyone was being screened by the metal detector, I mean everyone, even those in military garb, even those who were with the law enforcement were also being screened. They wanted to make sure that this was a safe event, knowing that Chris Kyle is an international figure. They know there will also be some mixed emotions and thoughts about honoring him this way. We did get word that there would possibly be some who would show up to protest. I can tell you that everything, though, has been very smooth. This has been a very smooth event. No major issues, no problems to report as of this time. And so I think they definitely succeeded in that era. And in talking to those who were coming in, they were thankful that that measure of security would be taken. But as you mentioned, what was happening on the inside, the emotion, that definitely is the center of attention in this event, and all was running smooth here from the outside.
Okay, Shari, great news to hear. We appreciate it. Thanks so much.
And our Joel Thomas was inside Cowboy Stadium, and he was with the thousands of people who showed up to honor this man who was a hero for our country. And Joel, recount for us some of what you saw inside.
Well, actually, it was what we saw inside and outside. We followed a brigadier general who was just another face in the crowd, albeit in uniform. But there were a lot of people in uniforms. But this general was just coming in with everybody else. But I noticed him looking around quite a bit. We stopped him and talked to him, and he said that this meant more than just honoring a fallen hero. This meant years and years of military service that went unappreciated for all the other men and women in uniform, where finally the community was appreciating them too. And you could get that sense inside of camaraderie and brotherhood amongst the people in uniform, but there were also tears in the eyes of the civilians as well. And that meant a lot to the men and women in uniform too. During the middle of the service, we actually took a break to see what the rest of the community was doing beyond the services here. In fact, the area around here came to a standstill as well. It wasn't just here in Cowboys Stadium. We went by a sports bar where it's normally hustle and bustle during the rush hour. There was no ESPN on. There was the service, and there was silence. Servers moved. You could hear the rattle of forks on plates, and that was it. It was like the whole area came to a standstill to appreciate for one moment, for one service, what this man had done for his country, and then pause to think about what the other people are doing for their country every single day. Karen, Doug?
Joel Thomas, well done. 10 years a U.S. Navy SEAL, 4 tours of duty in Iraq, America's deadliest sniper, as we've reported, obviously, when the book came out, American Sniper, just over a year ago. But more important than anything, you know, a dad and a husband. And clearly when we watch the words from Taya Kyle come out of her mouth and speaking directly to her children, you get the sense that she garnered some of that SEAL strength from living with him and being his wife for many years, because you know, the strength she had to get up there and talk the way she did was great.
Oh, and there were so many other people there that he affected. You heard about his fellow SEAL who died there in Iraq, and they talked about how affected he was by that, and he adopted Mama Lee. He called her Mama Lee. And he said, you know, you're a part of my family now, and he lived it. He didn't just speak the words, he lived it, and he affected so many people. He touched so many people's lives. And one of the things that really struck me and that I thought was wonderful was Taya Kyle also talking about Chad Littlefield, the other person who was killed with Chris Kyle on that day 9 days ago.
Right, and for those of you who maybe joined us a little late, let's rewind for just a moment. Taya Kyle, there was many poignant moments during her talk today, but one in particular we want to share with you one more time. So take a listen. Taya Kyle speaking, this is less than 15, 20 minutes ago.
Will be the wife of a man who is a warrior both on and off the battlefield. Some people along the way have told Chris that through it all, he was lucky I stayed with him. I'm standing before you now to set the record straight. Remember this, I am the one who is literally, in every sense of the word, blessed that Chris stayed with me. I feel compelled to tell you that I'm not a fan of people romanticizing their loved ones in death. I don't need to romanticize Chris, because our reality is messy, passionate, full of every extreme emotion known to man, including fear, compassion, anger, pain, laughing so hard we doubled over and hugged it out, laughing when we were irritated with each other, and laughing when we were so in love it felt like someone hung the moon for only us.
That is the sense, Karen, that I got last year in talking to them, because remember, I had them both together. You know, we were out at a gun range, ironically, and doing the story, and it was all surrounding the book. But the biggest part of the story that we did was this relationship that they had, and that moment that they had where he decided between, you know, the love of military and the one thing in his life professionally that defined him as a human being, and he was willing to walk away from that. You know, but Taya and Kyle both that day made no bones about it that, you know, their relationship was not perfect. Like whose is, thank you very much, but that they had come to this wonderfully common ground and found love, and they were able to share everything with each other, you know,
and her sharing that with us today.
Oh,
I mean,
incredible.
it brought out a side of him that many people weren't aware of, and I can't imagine her strength.
Yeah. The procession tomorrow, we'll just let you know as we get close to wrapping up our coverage. Tomorrow's procession is going to begin in Midlothian, and it's going to go all the way to Austin. You've probably heard this by now, but Austin is where Kyle will be buried. This is likely to be the largest ever procession in the history of the state of Texas.
That's right. The processional is going to leave Midlothian at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. They're going to go 287 to Austin and hit I-35E. And that's going to take them down to Austin and Texas State Cemetery, where Chris Kyle will be buried.
And the pictures tomorrow, I would forecast, are going to be incredible. You will see thousands of people lining the highway. They will be on bridges. They will be on overpasses. They will be lining the sides of the highway where they can. Tomorrow's going to be a big day.
Our chief meteorologist, Larry Mowry, has told us that tomorrow is not going to be a great day weather-wise. There's quite likely going to be rain and possibly a lot of it, but I would venture to guess, I would wager that there will still be a lot of people out there.
And clearly for those of you who maybe, you're going to go out yourself, it's safety first, obviously, in a weather day like that tomorrow. So that is going to do it for our special coverage today. Thank you for joining us for Remembering Chris Kyle. Complete coverage, of course, coming up on CBS 11 News just 1 hour from now at 4 o'clock.
And Dr. Phil, we should let you know, will not be seen today. It will be seen tomorrow, and the talk is coming your way next. We'll see you at 4, 5, 6, and 10.
He could be rough and tough with his son and kind and gentle with his daughter at the same time. And his love for his family was endless.
Love you, brother, and I'll miss you tremendously already.
He was a man, he was a myth, and he was a legend.
Hoo-yah, Chris Kyle.
You taught me that I could be more independent than I ever wanted to be.